So I just finished showing this video on Alexander the Great and the Jews as told by Rabbi Beryl Wine. Might be a kind of interesting side note of information you're not aware of. What I want you to do though is think about him talking about the way the Jews reacted to Alexander the Great coming, and then the book of Maccabees and what's discussed in that book as one of the links for the reading, for you looking at as a primary text, how while that was looked positively upon, on one hand, the Hellenization of the Jews was a concern for the religious establishment. And so in these lectures, I haven't talked much about the concept of Hellenization like in the way that the book has. But essentially, what we're talking about is a period in which different parts of the world are becoming very Greek-like. And maybe one way to think of it is the way that English and our Western traditions now kind of dominate and permeate around the world, and how you have these negative reactions to it, and at the same time are also so much a part of it. You know, I gave you the example of the Ayatollah Khomeini, of Iran, who was a strict Shiite Muslim that was against Western influence. He hated what he saw. The Shah of Iran was so Western. You know, this Muslim Shah drinking wine on TV, which wine's forbidden by Muslims, and you know, women not wearing head coverings, and just basically really pawning himself off as in a very Western way. He was against this West toxification of his country, as one Iranian writer put. But then he also was influenced apparently by Plato's Republic. And even the Islamic Republic of Iran, if you looked at the way it's structured, it is a type of democratic republic. It's an Islamic republic, and it's really a morphing of Western ways with a kind of radical new form of Islamic government that really has never been a part of history. My whole point of saying that is, again, I go into the what things now to show how we can conceptualize the past. Greek learning and Greek ways became a trend that dominated many parts, especially the urban centers, and at the same time there was also that tension and that resistance to it. So, you know, now we see, even with certain groups having public beheadings, or you know, the Taliban blew up a Buddha and video cameraed it. Well, the video camera is something that really represents modernity. The idea of destroying an idol is something that goes back to ancient times, right? And they may not see themselves as even being Western by it, but what does technology represent? Internet, whatever. And so again, Hellenism was that thing that permeated much of the world, and it was a love-hate type of thing that you would see. So that's something to just think about. I wanted to kind of further discuss talking about the legacy of Alexander the Great and the Jews. There's a first century Jewish historian who wrote in Greek named Josephus. He actually collaborated with the Romans when they were going to destroy the temple. He's an interesting and complex person, but he wrote an account in the first century. He said, "And when the book of Daniel, a biblical book in the Bible, was showed him, wherein Daniel declared that one of the Greeks should destroy the empire of the Persians, he supposed that himself was the person intended, and as was then glad, he dismissed the multitude for the present. But the next day he called them to him, and bid them ask what favors they pleased of him. Whereupon the high priest desired that they might enjoy the laws of their forefathers, and might pay no tribute on the 7th year. He granted all they desired. And when they entreated him that he would permit the Jews in Babylon and Media to enjoy their own laws, also he willingly promised to do hereafter what they desired. Okay, and so you look down here and see um, that this is the case. The book of Daniel, I think it's in chapter 8. It looks like a prophecy. It's very clearly referring to Alexander the Great. For many religious Christians, this was proof of the prophecy of the Bible. Secular scholars date the book later than the traditional religious groups. So that's debated. I'm not a scholar enough on being able to tell which text is, to really pinpoint a date based on what I actually could know. I'm just going to let you know that there is the consensus is that Book of Daniel was written later, after Alexander the Great, and others claim it was like a few hundred years before he was. But this is the kind of the legacy he has, regardless. So prophetic, actually, or written later after the fact, it still shows tremendous influence and impact that he would have on another culture that would have an impact on Western civilization, which is from the Bible. Now, what ends up happening is that this decides the fate of Persia. So we'll go back to this, and basically, present-day Iraq is where this battle was at. Erbil, I don't know if you know this, but many parts of Iraq were once a part of the Persian Empire and controlled. Okay, that's also something to take note. So basically, in 330, Alexander's army stood in Persepolis, the capital of the Achaemenid Empire. And as you read in the book, he did what he did to the Persians was not how he handled with the Jews. And I had a Zoroastrian woman come speak at my class at Modesto Junior College a few years ago, and she talked about how the Zoroastrians, a very small number that still exist, really curse the name of Alexander the Great as somebody whose legacy he left behind in Persia with a real bitter taste in their mouths to this day. And then when I showed her the rabbi doing a discussion, she kind of laughed and shook her head, and she said, "Oh, I learn something new every day." So again, it shows how this legacy that he left behind is different to different peoples in the regions that he was conquering. So those crash courses, I'm just going to skip this, but if you just want to for your own interest, go ahead and you can Google Alexander the Great. What was he great is the question. He always does a fun analysis of these events. So Alexander the Great, as you saw in the book, wanted to, become like basically a Persian king and conquer more, and he really upset his generals. He was probably way more ambitious than even his own loyal men could handle, and he often would want to do things in a way that would upset some of the people that he fought alongside. So when he had his abrupt death, it's not surprising that there would be a real dilemma in terms of who would rule next. And essentially, when you're that big, it's just almost inevitable that you're going to start falling apart. And so this map kind of shows you, as you read from the book, that there were these different generals that would take over. And so you had Greek rulers over various parts of the world that were also competing with each other. The two main ones that we talk about are the Ptolemaic monarchy here, and then the Seleucid monarchy in the north that would fight with each other. You're going to see eventually where the from Syria, you're going to have a Greek ruler oppress Jews, and there's going to be this battle over the temple of Yahweh, which will lead to the celebration of Hanukkah, which we're not going to go into really explaining that right now. But it leaves a big impact. And so Ptolemy then is going to set up a dynasty in Egypt, And the Greek language is going to flourish in Egypt, and the Ptolemies are going to actually kind of become the pharaoh, so to speak, which is very interesting. And I'm going to kind of touch on this more and more. I want to talk a little bit about the Greek Septuagint in a little bit as well. So I'll just end it right here, and then we'll go on to some more points.